And we're back only a few short months after our previous episode, which, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know is actually really good. Today, we are finally mounting our coilovers. These are Fox 2.0 14-inch coilovers. I went with these because they're a pretty decent shock and I could get a good deal on them, so there you go. No fancy sponsorships here, just me and what I can afford. Now the first step in getting these things mounted is just to get everything out of the way. So fenders and everything attached to them are coming off. Now with my lower mounts tacked in and some room to work, first thing I'm going to do is verify that my front radiator support is square to the cab of the truck so that I can use those as references for where I mount the coilovers. Now where I'm putting these tape lines is actually not super critical, it just needs to be mirrored on both sides so that I can make sure that my coilover mounts are symmetrical. Now these little triangles I've created with these extra pieces of tape, however, are actually pretty critical. Now that's because that diagonal tape that creates the triangle here actually marks the point at which my coilover spring touches my tire. So I know that I have to be inboard of that line when I create my mounts so that I have tire clearance when the tire's tucked and the steering is turned all the way to the driver's side. This piece of 2-inch quarter wall DOM that is currently sleeving over one of my steering box bolts, as well as acting as a mounting point for one of my track bar mount plates, is going to be the perfect start to my shock hoop. So that makes it easy. Now I just have to add a mount behind the shock for the rear of my shock hoop. And with the driver's side shock hoop mounts figured out, I just mirror those over to the passenger side. That'll do. Now we can get our front coilover hoop mount welded on here. Try and get that about level. Oh, look at that, 1 degree, that's good enough for me. About 15 1/8. So that's far side to far side, which means that's the same as center to center, because it's the same diameter tube. That's my target, but we need to count for spring back. I'm going 1 inch past. Now a tubing notcher would have made this job a little bit easier, but I can't afford one right now. And if you go and watch the Fabrication series video about how to cope tube without a notcher, it's an awesome video for figuring out how to do these coped edges without any fancy tools. With our hoop all coped up, we can drop it onto our hoop mounts and do our first clearance check. We're primarily looking to make sure that the hoop doesn't touch the tire when it's turned to full lock and tucked completely. Now the tire is going to end up in different spots on each side because of the track bar geometry, so it's important to check both sides and build a spacer that clears the side where the tire is tucked in the most. That way they're symmetrical and you know that both tires clear. Now we can check to make sure that our two hoops are level with each other. As you can see, we're about a 1/2 inch high on the passenger side. So I'm going to pull that side off, trim it down, put it back, and test it again. Alright, now that's pretty close, and once we get this hoop seated fully down on the hoop mounts, we'll be perfectly level. By the way, don't worry about all these frame cuts and junk welds and stuff here. That's an idea that didn't work out. Either way, let's get these hoops tacked in and we can do a hood check. Hood check. Now, upon further inspection, the shock hoop and the hood have about the same amount of clearance on both sides. Means we are good to go. Let's move on. Quick note before we move on here. You can see these two tabs I have hanging onto the shock hoop. These kind of tabs are pretty readily available through like Rough Stuff or any of the other parts manufacturers. Soon they're going to disappear from this build because I ended up wanting to do it a little bit different way based on how everything was laying out. These are still a great option. If you're doing this at home, it's a simple way to do it. So, speaking of that different direction, let's head that way now. Alright, so the time has come to bridge this coilover hoop to this coilover hoop. And that way, neither one of them will want to just, bend in when it gets any weight on it. Now, looking at these guys, here's what we're dealing with. Looks like we have a perfect little path right in front of that air cleaner. And we'll actually be able to do just a straight shot there. And my shock mount's going to fall somewhere in this triangle right here. So right on the inside of that is kind of a perfect place for a stiffening tube. An inside measurement of 43.5. So 43.5 is the inside distance, which means we want to add about 1/3 of our tube diameter per side. So 2/3 of an 1.75" tube. It's about 1 1/8", right around there, something like that. So we want to go from, crap. What did I say the number was? The cope's not perfect. As you can see, the gap rocks a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll rock it up, and that way I have the gap up here. I'd rather have the gap on the top because I can easily see what I'm doing. If the gap's down here on the underside, it gets a lot trickier to fill in a strong and visually appealing way. So we didn't do a great job of fitting them, so we'll hide that in the welding. But fake it till you make it. I need to slot these holes because there was no way to remove it after I welded it in. Now we should actually be able to take this thing out once I weld it in place. This has been kicking around my garage for quite a while. I took a dive in the rough stuff scrap bin when I worked there and pulled this beauty out. This is well, it is the centerpiece of one of their housings. It was scrapped from there, and I've been saving it because it had a nice bump, semi-bump formed, not really bump formed. It had a nice press broken radius on it, and I thought, you know, that's kind of a cool piece. I'll eventually find a use for it. And just a short 5 years later, here we are. And with the shock mounts all finished and proven, it's just time to do all the finish welding. Which the camera's battery died for, and I have no footage of. Well, some time has passed since I recorded most of that video. Somewhere around 2 years, but who's counting? But me missing out on the footage of the final welding of this thing left the video a bit anticlimactic. So I just wanted to give you kind of a payoff to what you all just watched, which is seeing what the coilover mounts actually look like. So here we are. We got our coilover down in there, and this guy's on just its own springs. Look at that. No jack stands. As you can see, we also have our reservoir mounts in here. These guys back here. Pretty simple, just a little tapered box bracket that welds onto our 1 3/4 crossbar. Holds those in with some hose clamps, which was relatively simple. Had to work them around the brake master cylinder and the that can for the AC system. And a couple other engine compartment goodies, which I also didn't get footage of because I'm terrible at YouTube. That's about all I got for now. This is kind of the big payoff this whole video has been leading to, so sorry it's not all that interesting, but it's real life. This is what builds look like sometimes. Also, if you haven't already seen them, check out these sweet hoodies. They are available on the Teespring page, and make yourself feel good by knowing that if you buy like 5 t-shirts or I think 3 hoodies, either one of those will pay me more than YouTube pays me over the course of a month at this point. So they're not overpriced. That's just what YouTube does right now. Oh well, it is what it is. I'm doing this because I love it and I have fun with it, and I hope you guys do too. So anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next time.